Hello and welcome. My name's Jerry Hess. I'm a member of the Developer Integrations team over here at Element Payment Services. Today I'd like to take the time to talk to you about TriPOS and provide you with a short demo. TriPOS is a turnkey payment processing application designed to provide a single simplified integration. TriPOS is compatible with a comprehensive suite of hardware devices, connects to all authorization providers, and removes the business software application from PCI scope. TriPOS also eliminates the need to develop to various hardware manufacturers' device APIs. Developers only need to complete a single simplified integration to support end-to-end integrated payments. TriPOS promises a future-proof integration. Any newly supported devices, authorization platforms, and/or transaction protocols such as USEMV automatically become available to customers through TriPOS without the need for additional development work. For today's demo, the first thing we'll need are some test credentials, and for that, simply head over to our main page, elementps.com. Scroll down and you'll see a form here. Fill that out and hit submit, and your credentials will be emailed to you shortly after that. Once you have tried some credentials for the Express platform, let's head over to our brand new GitHub repository, and for that we're going to simply type in github.com/elementps into our favorite browser. Once you arrive on our main GitHub page, you'll see we have three different flavors of TriPOS sample code. We have a Java sample, a C# sample, and a PHP sample. For today's demo, we'll be utilizing the C# code. If we scroll down here and take a look at the prerequisites, you should already have your Express test account. If not, you can utilize this link to get it. Once you have your Express test account, you'll need the TriPOS SDK itself, and for that, you'll need to register here and then log in at mft.elementps. Once you log in over here, you'll see the Element TriPOS folder. Within there, here is the TriPOS SDK itself. Simply download and extract this zip. If you have a physical test device, now would be a good time to grab the USB drivers for that device. Once you've extracted the TriPOS SDK, it should look identical to this folder structure here. You're going to want to fire up the TriPOS setup application, and at that point in time, you're going to want to have those test credentials available as you'll be prompted for them through the course of the install. Once you've installed TriPOS, you'll notice in your program files directory a new folder by the name of Vantiv, and within that Vantiv folder, a directory called TriPOS Service. Within the TriPOS service folder, you'll find the logs. These logs will be very useful for troubleshooting purposes. Also, if you need any assistance from myself or my colleagues, we'll probably require these logs to help troubleshoot. Also, within the TriPOS service directory is the TriPOS configuration file. And if we take a quick look at the configuration file, we won't get into every field within here because it's very well commented. But I do want to take a look at the lanes that are set up. By default, you'll have several lanes in here. For today's demo, I'll be utilizing lane 9999. This is the null pin pad simulator. You can utilize this particular lane if you do not have a physical test device yet. And we'll also be utilizing at the very bottom here lane 1. This lane by default is going to be set up for a pin pad. It's going to be set up for the Verifone MX915, and you can decipher that based on the driver that's being utilized here. If we wanted to utilize, for instance, the Verifone VX805, we would simply pass the appropriate driver, which would be the Verifone XPI driver. Along with the driver, you need to ensure that the communication settings in here are jiving with your local machine. To ensure that's the case, simply open up Device Manager and look at the COM port in question and the port settings for that COM port. Lastly, within this pinpad lane config, I want to point out this tag is contactless MSD entry allowed. You want to ensure that's set to true if you intend to test any kind of contactless transactions such as Apple Pay, Google Wallet. Alright, so at this point we should have the TriPOS service.net service up and running. To ensure that's the case, I'm just going to simply type in localhost port 8080/help into my browser. That's going to pull up our documentation for TriPOS. Here you'll find the API documentation. And we'll just take a quick look through here. As well as release notes, metadata, etc. So now that we have TriPOS up and running, let's hop into our sample code here, and for that we're going to simply click Download Zip. That'll give us the entire project in a zip file. Simply get that zip file extracted, and as soon as you do, it should look very similar to this structure here. We're going to go ahead and get right into the project folder and go ahead and load up that solution file into your local IDE. This sample code doesn't need to be configured in any way, shape, or form, and for the intent of saving time here, we're just going to fire up this sample code and get right into the demo. Once you have the sample code compiled, it'll look identical to this. You'll notice on the form in the top left here, we have the standard TriPOS sale hard-coded. The listening port, which is going to default to 8080, is configurable. You'll be prompted for that during the course of the install, or it can always be changed within the configuration file itself. Beneath the URL, we have our request data. The TriPOS.NET service is capable of accepting XML or JSON. Down here, we'll get the response back from the Express platform. We're going to take that response and parse it out into a nice clean receipt over here. And lastly, within the form, you'll see the request headers. These will be the request headers for each request that's sent through. So let's go ahead and populate some JSON sample data. And you'll see this is all non-sensitive data. We've got some billing information, a transaction amount, and down here I want to point out the lane ID value. This is how we're going to know which one of those lanes within the configuration to utilize. As I mentioned, 9999 can be utilized for integrating TriPOS until you have that physical test device, so let's go ahead and send this request through. The first thing you'll notice is the request headers populated down here. And here's our response back from the Express platform. Standard sale, we've provided a small tip on there for you. We're utilizing our Visa Global Payments test card. We've also provided some sample signature data here. We've parsed out that signature data and rendered it at the bottom of the receipt. And lastly, I'd just like to point out that with TriPOS, with every standard sale request, you're going to get a direct URL that can be utilized for a return, a reversal, or a void transaction. This is very convenient. There's not too much we can do with the No PinPad simulator, so why don't we go ahead and fire up that Verifone MX915. And to do so, all I've changed is the lane ID over to lane 1 and sent through the request. You'll notice on the PinPad here we have the verbiage please swipe or please slide card along with the contactless logo. For this first test transaction, I'm just going to utilize my personal Motorola phone here. And by simply putting the phone on the device and tapping it, we'll pass through that Google Wallet transaction. And here we have a prompt for tip. Within the TriPOS config, I've turned on both tips and cashback. These tip amount selections can be adjusted within the configuration as well as the cashback amounts. We'll go ahead and say 20%. And now we're going to confirm the total. And lastly here, we'll be prompted for a signature. And I'll just do a little squiggly that'll show up in our sample application. And if we look at our sample application here, we can see we've parsed out all that response data. We have a contactless credit transaction with a subtotal of $3.25 and a tip amount of 65 cents. We can see that the signature data has been passed back, and we've rendered that appropriately at the bottom of the receipt. And once again, your return, reversal, and void URLs are provided there for you. The beauty here with TriPOS is we don't have to specify a contactless transaction, a credit transaction. We simply tell TriPOS, hey, we want a standard sale, and let TriPOS and the device in question figure out the rest. So let's go ahead and send through a second request. I've changed absolutely nothing as far as the request goes. You'll notice the same verbiage. This time I'm going to utilize a Visa test card with debit capability. Go ahead and slide that through. And since this is a debit and gift capable and credit capable card, we have all those options on the PinPad. Let's see what debit looks like. I do have cashback turned on, as I mentioned, so we're being prompted for that. These are the cashback selections, they can be configured within the TriPOS config file. We're going to enter in a $80 amount. Along with those cashback dollar values, you can also have a cashback limit. So if you want to have a $100 limit, whatever it may be, you can enter that into the configuration file as well. A 4-digit PIN should get us to the tip prompt, and 20% is always good. And here we have a total including that cashback value. We're going to go ahead and say OK. No signature required for debit. And if we look at our parsed receipt here, we see a swipe debit transaction for $325 with $80 cash back and a 65-cent tip. As we didn't provide a signature, you'll notice that TriPOS returns this status code, signature not required by payment type. Alright, so let's send through one last transaction, and this time let's just do straight credit. Once again, not changing anything in the request, simply utilizing a credit-only test card. Get that swipe through. And we go directly to the tip amount. Another nice thing with TriPOS and the tip amount is you can set a threshold for the tip if you would, a threshold for signatures. So if you want a signature for anything over $20, you can set that in the config as well. Currently I have it prompting for a signature on everything. And there we go, standard swipe credit sale for $325 with a $65 tip and a total amount of $390. My little squiggly came through and was passed back in the signature data and rendered appropriately. And there we have our return, reversal, and void URLs. That's all the time I have today. Please feel free to head over to our GitHub repository. Once again, that's github.com/elementps. Please feel free to contribute, fork any of our sample code that's available out here. Thank you for your time today. It's been my pleasure providing you this demo, and I look forward to working with you in the future. Until that day, may every day be a happy payments day.